Look, we all know you're a bit schizo. All of these different voices in your head. Which one are you supposed to listen to? Let me tell you, most people are probably listening to the wrong one. But how do we know which voices are friends or foes? How can we tell whether or not something is our own delusion or the voice of God? How much should we trust our instincts and intuition and our thoughts? The answer to this question requires the power of discernment. Unless you become familiar with these voices, it's hard to really know which ones to listen to. You may believe it's just all one voice and it's all you. Technically, it's kind of true, but also, technically, it's also kind of wrong. Congratulations, you have just learned the first lesson of spirituality. Nothing makes any sense. And every other message is a contradiction to the previous one. So strap on your jacket of life, because we are headed for the sea of madness. I will be your Willy Wonky, and you shall be my little Oompa Loompa for today. Let us note the difference between the three human faculties. Everyone has all three, but we will all have dominance in one of the three. Another will be secondary for us, and the other will be kind of like our weakness. The first faculty is our instinct. People who have strong instincts are those who are typically identified with their body, or who are very in touch with their body. They are typically weaker in intellect, but they have good intuition. These are people who act before thinking. And their intelligence is focused toward the body, giving them very powerful instincts. The second faculty is the intellect. People who have a strong intellect are those who often identify with their mind. Their intuition is usually weak, but they are often grounded enough to be in touch with their bodies, with their instincts. These are people who think before acting. Thinking is their superpower, and their intelligence is directed toward brain speed, typically what you might associate with high IQ. The third faculty is intuition. People who have a strong intuition are often also people who are identified with their minds, but also who are in touch with the energetic or the more spiritual realms. They are often a bit ungrounded, sometimes detached from their body, but can be highly intelligent. Their superpower is creativity, and their intelligence is directed toward brain power. This is the category that I fall under, if you hadn't noticed. Just a chaotic and creative madman, a wizard of divine origin. Now, biologically, you are kind of predestined to fall into one of these three categories. But you can also be any random mixture of all three. But these are the basic blueprints. To simplify things a bit, we can regard these three archetypes, let's say, as body dominant, mind dominant, or energy dominant. Some people have strong bodies, some people have strong minds, and some people have strong creative power. If you are body dominant, you should always listen to your instinct, and perhaps often ignore your thoughts. If you are mind dominant, you should probably listen to your thoughts more often, but not so much your intuition. If you are energy dominant, you should always listen to your intuition, but you probably won't listen too much to your instincts. Although it's important to develop our other faculties, we want to be able to rely on our strengths to direct us. If we follow our weakest faculty, then we will most likely get led astray. The instincts arise from the gut. They are the divine intelligence of the body communicating with you. This power that has been evolving for billions of years, pulsing through your veins. It is a message from the universe. But because the body precedes the mind, the body speaks in feelings and emotions. It is beyond all language and thoughts. By honoring your feelings, you give trust to your instincts. If you repress or reject your feelings, you will betray your instincts, and in turn they will betray you. They just won't be able to help you, and that's not good. These three faculties are basically like our compass to direct us on the sea of madness that is life. We must become aware which of the three works best for us and allow it to guide us to where we need to go. The intellect, of course, arises from the mind, or you might say the brain. Although the intellect is an incredibly powerful tool, it can also be equally as dangerous. It can lead you astray and cause great harm, or it could lead you to positivity and greatness. The difficulty with the mind is that you are basically burdened with the entire responsibility for your life. It's up to you as an individual sense of self to figure out everything. And you might say, well, that's how everybody lives, isn't it? That's kind of what life is like. We kind of just figure out things, and we learn things from other people and other individuals and try to figure things out. And no, that is unique to people who are on drugs, the drug of the mind or the ego. Only the ego burdens itself with such responsibilities. But for instance, with the instincts and the intuition, you are basically relying on a power greater than you to direct your life. When it comes to the intellect and thoughts, you have to really develop the power of discernment to figure out which thoughts you should follow and which thoughts you should just ignore. The intuition arises from source, what you might call consciousness or the highest state of energy. If instincts were a message from below, intuition is a message from above. Instincts are a feeling, but intuition is a sensing, a sixth sense kind of. Intuition requires surrender and allowing the divine life force to flow freely through you. And in a way, it acts on your behalf. Although the intuition can never truly lead you astray, from the mind's perspective, it may get you into situations that seem problematic, because the mind always wants things to really be a certain way. But divine wisdom knows that you don't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. And what you need sometimes is a spanking. Spanking from God. Don't worry, it's done with love. So how do we know which faculty to follow and when? Well, if you are watching this video, you have probably lived a bit, which means you are already comfortable with one of these three faculties. Or two. You already know the answer, you just have to sit with the question for a moment. Just kind of pay attention to where your focus automatically goes. Does it go towards feelings? Does it go towards thoughts? The difference between intuition and thoughts can be kind of tricky because they're both heady if you think about it. But those who are intuitive are highly creative. You know the difference between somebody who's just a creative genius versus somebody who's incredibly smart. You can also even pay attention to the words you say. Do you say, I feel? Or do you say, I think? Or do you say, I see? Now let's see if I can come up with some examples of each of the three types so maybe you can get a better idea. Someone like Albert Einstein was a creative genius, highly intuitive. Someone who has a very powerful intellect would be someone like Jordan Peterson, very strong mind. Someone who could be in the category of having a strong body or strong instincts might be someone like Joe Rogan. Or really anybody who is an MMA fighter, because you have to have a tough body to be an MMA fighter. These kinds of people typically end up doing something physical, whether hard labor or working with their hands, or like I said, fighting. Intellectuals, of course, work with their minds, so they might become writers or teachers or engineers. It's really so mixed. It's hard to classify or put people into a box this way. But this is just kind of the basic blueprint. And one easy example is a great majority of artists and musicians are all highly intuitive because you need to be in touch with that higher source in order to be creative, because that is the source of creation. Who would have thought? So basically, the more creative you are is determined by how well you allow the flow of creativity through you. And you see with people with strong intellect, strong mind, the reason that they are weak in intuition is because the mind is a tool that separates. The mind, as I've said often before, cuts you off from the source, because that energy juice gets transmuted and turns into the mind. So the mind soaks up all that juice, and so you live in this kind of construct. You live your whole life in the mind rather than in the flow of the present moment. This is why you will also see almost everybody who is an atheist fall under the exact same archetype, the same blueprint. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that blueprint is they're all highly intellectual, rational types, because they're all identified with their mind. And when you are identified with your mind, you are not as in touch with your deep intuition. You're not so much in touch with the source. So they literally cannot see God. They cannot see evidence of God, because biologically their whole imperative is focused on being a mind, operating in the world. But I digress. When your instincts communicate with you, there will be an undeniable feeling. Unless you try really hard, it's incredibly difficult to ignore them. And almost always, if not every time you ignore your instincts, you will always look back and say, man, I shouldn't have done that. Because you will have known something without being able to clearly articulate it. There will have been a strong charge that something feels right or something feels wrong. It's a kind of clicking into place or a certainty. When this happens, don't think about it. Just trust it. Just act on it. Because by thinking about it, that is when you hesitate and you lose the opportunity. You see how the instinctual person may be sabotaged by the thoughts, their weak point, their intellect. Just because something isn't rational doesn't mean it's not true. When you are guided by your intellect, you will most likely experience a lot of trial and error. Because the mind is fundamentally neutral. It has both a positive polarity and a negative polarity. So the mind is really like a sword or like a bow and arrow. It requires skill. It requires wisdom to be able to point it in the right direction. If you point it in the wrong direction, you get things like cutting down the rainforests for our own selfish needs, or creating nuclear bombs, or taking advantage of others. And at the same time, if you point it in the right direction, just imagine what good things could happen. Cure for diseases, technological advancements, and other cool things. It's not that difficult to understand that when you have negative thoughts and you follow them, it will bring you to lower states of being. And the more you focus on things that are positive thoughts, the more you will be raised, and the more positive your life will become. But if you are the intellectual type, just follow what you think is best, because you just need the experience. There's no way around it. You have to find out which things work for you and which things don't. And as you experience, you learn to master your life, your mind. And so you will learn and grow each time you use it, even if you fail. When you are guided by intuition, you will have an undeniable sense that something is true or not. Again, perhaps not necessarily being able to put it into words. Rather than a feeling of certainty, of something being right or wrong, intuition is more like a recognition of truth, or a recognition of something that is false. We experience intuition as a kind of knowing or seeing. You may now have a clearer understanding of how to discern these voices, these messages from above and below, and from the void. I guess it's all from the void if you think about it. However, sometimes the messages can still get mixed and tangled, and there can be some confusion. The way that normal thoughts operate is that they're just like objects in your mind. They're arising and falling all the time. And you have the choice to feed or ruminate upon or react to any of them. And the quality of the ideas or thoughts that you follow will determine the quality of your experiences in life. Because there is nothing that is separated from your mind. For every experience, there is always the experience and your mind experiencing. So whatever information is in your mind will color and determine the way you see the world, the way that everything is filtered for you. And that will influence your direction, the feelings that you have, the actions that you take, and therefore the consequences in your life. And so when it comes to thoughts, it is quite common sense. You only focus on thoughts that are useful or skillful or positive. You don't allow your negative thoughts to be dominant in your mind, because that will ruin your life. You don't feed the negative thoughts, but you feed the positive ones. And so the positive thoughts will lead you in positive directions. The instincts, however, they will almost always be undeniable, because the body is such a dominant aspect in our lives here as human beings that when it sends you a message, you know. It's like when you have to go poop. The message is loud and clear. However, if you wish to choose to push these feelings aside, if you avoid listening to the message, well then, guess what? That's right, poopy pants. When you don't act on your instincts, usually problems arise later down the road. Now, when the intuition speaks to you, it can also arise in the form of a thought. However, the intuitive thought will be spontaneous and profound, while a normal thought might be neutral or random or a bit chaotic. Intuition radiates truth because it stems from the highest truth, source or consciousness. And truth is undeniable. It's like if you were standing in the presence of God, God will not be denied. How could you? It's not possible. Even the most atheist to the bone individual could not deny God in God's presence. Sometimes, however, the intuition can also emerge in the form of not knowing or trusting. You can kind of trust that something will work out the way it's meant to, because you have an intuitive sense about it. While the instincts require you to take action, the intuition might require you to be patient and surrender and allow things to unfold and to wait. But at the end of the day, you can only truly develop the power of discernment from trial and error by experiencing these things for yourself, by going out and living your life and seeing what works for you. With knowledge alone, it may still remain difficult to know which one to follow. You already have the power within you to know, so just pick a voice and follow it. Just ignore the devil on your shoulder and listen to the angel. You know yourself better than anyone else, and so you have to make your own decisions. This is part of the great journey, learning how to navigate your life with skill and grace. The instincts, the intellect, and the intuition are your tools. They will help guide you in the right direction. The quality of your life will be determined by your ability to manage your faculties properly. So become familiar with these tools and learn to master all of them. But focus on your strengths first. And soon you will be well on your way to mastering your life. Good job.